Listen, you lovely cows of Bashan who live on Mount Shamron, who oppress the poor and grind down the needy, who say to their husbands, "Bring something to drink." Adonai Elohim has sworn by his holiness that your time is surely coming. You will be dragged away with hooks, the last of you with fishhooks. You will leave through breaks in the wall, each woman left behind the next, and be sent off to Hamarna, says Adonai. Come to Beit El and commit crimes, to Gilgal and commit more crimes. Bring your sacrifices in the morning and your tithes after 3 days. Burn leavened bread as a thank offering. Brag in public about your voluntary offerings, because that's what you love to do, Israel, says Adonai Elohim. I made your teeth clean food in all your cities, left you nothing to eat in all your villages. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. I withheld the rain from you 3 months before the harvest. I made it rain on one city, not on another. One field had rain, while another with no rain dried up. From there, 2 or 3 cities, they were staggered to one city for water to drink, but there wasn't enough. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. I struck your crops with hot winds and blight. Your many gardens and vineyards, cutter worms devoured your fig and olive trees. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. I sent a plague on you like that of Egypt. Put your young men to death with the sword. Let your horses be captured. Filled your nostrils with the stench of your camps. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. I overthrew some of you, as when God overthrew Sodom and Amorah. You were like a burning stick snatched from the fire. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. This is why I will deal with you this way, Israel, and because I will deal with you in this way, prepare to meet your God, Israel. Him who forms mountains and creates wind, who declares to humankind his thoughts, who turns the morning to darkness and strides on the heights of the earth. Adonai Elohim Svaot is his name. Hear this word, what I take up against you, and lament, house of Israel. The virgin of Israel has fallen, she will not rise again. She lies abandoned on her own soil, with no one to lift her up. For thus says Adonai Elohim, the city from which 1,000 marched will be left with 100. The one from which the 100 marched will be left with 10 from the house of Israel. Here is what Adonai says to the house of Israel: if you seek me, you will survive. But don't seek Beit El or enter Gilgal or pass on to Beersheba. For Gilgal will certainly go into exile, and Beit El will come to nothing. If you seek Adonai, you will survive. Otherwise, he will break out against you in the house of Yosef like fire, devouring Beit El, with no one to quench the flames. You who turn justice to bitter wormwood and throw righteousness to the ground, he who made the Pleiades and Orion, who brings death-like shadows over the morning, who darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters in the sea and with it floods the earth. Adonai is his name. He flashes destruction on the strong so that destruction overcomes the fortresses. They hate anyone promoting justice at that city. They detest anyone who speaks the truth. Therefore, because you trample on the poor and extort from the levies of grain, although you have built houses of cut stone, you will not live in them. And though you have planted pleasant vineyards, you will not drink their wine. For I know how numerous are your crimes, and how outrageous your sins, bullying the innocent, extorting ransoms, pushing the poor aside at the gate. At times like these, prudent persons stay silent, for it is an evil time. Seek good, not evil, so that you will survive. Then Adonai Elohim Svaot will be with you. As you say he is, hate evil, love good, and uphold justice at the gate. Maybe Adonai Elohim will take pity on the survivors of Yosef. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim Svaot, Adonai, In all public squares there will be lamentation. In all the streets they will cry, "Oh no!" They will summon farmers to mourn and professional mourners to wail. There will be wailing on every vineyard, for I will pass through among you, says Adonai. Woe to you who want the day of Adonai. Why do you want it? This day of Adonai is a darkness, not light. Someone will run from a lion just to be met by a bear. And as if he enters a house, put his hand on the wall just to be bitten by a snake. Won't the day of Adonai be darkness, not light, completely dark, with no brightness at all? I utterly loathe your festivals. I take no pleasure in your solemn assemblies. If you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them, nor will I consider the peace offerings or your stall-fed cattle. Spare me the noise of your songs. I don't want to hear your strumming of your lutes. Instead, let justice well up like water and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Did you bring me sacrifices and offerings in the desert 40 years, house of Israel? No. Now you will bear a Sukkot at your king and Kion, your images, the store of your God, which makes for yourselves as I excel you beyond Damascus, says Adonai Elohi Svaot. That is his name. Woe to you living at ease in Zion, to those who feel complacent on the hills of Shamron, renowned men, and the foremost nation, to whom the rest of Israel come, travel to Kilna and see. From there go on to Hamat the Great, then go down to Gat of the Plishtim. Are you better than those kingdoms? Is their territory larger than yours? You put off all that on the evil day, but hasten the reign of violence. You lie on beds of ivory and lounge sprawled out on your couches, dining on meat from lambs in the flock and from calves fatted in stalls. You make up wild songs at your parties, playing the lute and inventing other instruments, imagining that you're like David. You drink wine by the bowlful and anoint yourselves with the finest oils. Feel no grief in the ruin of Joseph. Therefore now they will be the first to go into exile with those being exiled, and the rivalry of those who lounge sprawling will pass away. Adonai Elohim swears by himself, says Adonai Elohi Svaot. I detest that Yaakov is so proud, and I hate his palaces. I will hand over the city along with everything in it. When that day comes, 10 men remain in one house, they will die. And if a dead man's uncle coming to bring the corpse out of his house has burned it, finds a survivor hidden in the innermost recesses of the house and asks, "Is anyone else there with you?" Then he receives the answer, "No." He will say, "Don't say any more, because we mustn't mention the name of Adonai." For when Adonai gives the order, great houses will be shattered and small houses reduced to rubble. Do horses run on rock? Does one plow there with oxen? Yet you have turned justice into poison, and the fruit of righteousness into bitter wormwood. You take pleasure in worthless things. You think your power comes from your own strength? But I will raise up a nation against you, house of Israel, says Adonai Elohi Svaot, and they will oppress you from the entrance of Hamat to the valley of the Avarah.